So the last type of quadratic surface is a little bit interesting of one, which is the hyperbolic paraboloid. This is the one I always find hardest to draw on paper or on the board, but it's kind of the most interesting of them in that it's sort of shaped like a saddle. Right? I mean, you can kind of imagine creating this thing as starting with one parabola, say this one here, that it's kind of drawn in this is the x-axis, this is z, so the one that's kind of drawn in the xz plane here. And then imagine having another parabola that's kind of upside down and perpendicular. In other words, this parabola here. So if you kind of join those two parabola together at their vertex, and then that parabola that's hanging upside down there, kind of trace it, slide it along the other parabola, and you'll trace out this shape. And actually, you can take the right side up parabola and slide it along the upside down one, and you'll get the same thing. That's kind of what happens here. So if you look at the mesh here, you can kind of see parabolas open, a whole bunch of them opening upward. But then if you look here, you can kind of see the other ones, the ones that open downward. Right, so those are the various traces of this. And then if you look at these other sort of horizontal lines here, if you look at what they cut out, like let's say at the top here, we have a piece here and a piece over here. These horizontal ones cut out hyperbolas. So this guy has two types of traces. You have parabolas, and inside the parabolas you actually even have two types. You have types that open up and down, and then the other type of trace you have are the hyperbolas. So now this is a little more tricky to see what A and B are going to do. So if you imagine, if you look here, let's ignore that the y is even here. Just focus on this part of the equation. Right? If we make A bigger, that's gonna, if you imagine this is just a parabola now, sort of z over c equals x squared over a squared. If you make A larger, this is going to kind of flatten out that parabola. So if you look here, here's the upward opening one is the one in the xz plane. So if we increase A, we can see it's kind of flattening out a bit, right? The parabola is becoming a lot wider. Likewise, so here's the one in the yz plane, and this should open downward. We're kind of forgetting this part of it now. So there's a minus in front of it. Right? So if we increase B, we see that widens that parabola there. And now we have like a Pringles chip. Right? So what does C do? That's an interesting one here. Let's make A and B a bit different. Right? So what C does is really it affects both of them simultaneously. Right? So you can see here, as this one's tightening back up, so is this one. Right? And that's the interesting thing here is, since C is on the other side of the equation, as C increases, these tighten, but as C decreases, they loosen. But now let's look at C a little more carefully, and let's also imagine we've taken the C here and multiplied it through to the other side. So that way C equals 0 isn't an issue. Okay, so if we let C keep getting closer and closer to 0, we see this guy is just sort of flattening out. Right? And eventually, let's not go negative yet. Let's get 0 in here. Right? When C literally is 0, then we just have the xy plane. Right? Because remember, if we've multiplied the C over to the right side, and then set it equal to 0, what we get is z equals 0. And that really is just the xy plane. All right, but now what if we let c go past 0 and get negative? Well, if we do that, we can see it's the same shape as before, but look a little more carefully. Let's look in the xz plane now. Now we see that the parabolas are upside down in the xz plane. And that's really because since c is negative, it kind of flips the signs of both of these. So then you can see the parabolas in the yz plane are now opening upward. Right? So this is a really interesting one here. It's kind of fun to watch this here. Let's slow this down a little bit and then play it and watch c go from negative to positive. Right, so you can kind of see how that happens. Let's start back over here again. Uh-oh, doesn't want to, oh, there we go. Right, so here c is negative. As it gets closer to 0, it flattens out, and then it starts bending the other way. Okay. Pretty interesting.